Well, I'm very glad to be talking to the one and only Anne Reburn, who I first met, not in person, but through your videos a few years ago. I was on an ELO kick and I came across your cover of Don't Let Me Down, and I was really blown away by it. It was fabulous. By the way, including the way you pronounce Bruce or whatever it was that
Yeah,
Lennon is singing there.
thank you. Thanks.
And then I then I heard your cover of Roy Orbison's "You Got It," which is absolutely fabulous. So when I was approached by Vin Tisi, who sometimes pronounces his name Vin Teese, he's the producer of the radio play of It's Real Life. I immediately thought of you as the person who could do a fabulous cover of Real Love, which is the centerpiece of the story, and you did do a fabulous job. But let's go back a little bit in history. Certainly, everyone, when they first begin loving music, are in effect doing covers, right? Because you don't write your own songs. Well, you might, but for the most part, when you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you're basically singing the songs that you hear on the radio and you've come to love. When exactly did you start thinking, hey, you know what, I'm going to make a video of this song? What was the first cover that you did?
Yeah, that's such a great point because I really did kind of grow up doing covers in a way. Some of them were covers of classical songs on the piano and piano lessons. Some of them were musical theater songs in musicals, but yeah, lots of performing other people's work before I started my own. The first cover that I did was when I was actually living in Barcelona. I was having a really hard time personally, and I was working as an English teacher or trying to work as an English teacher and wasn't enjoying it very much because for the first time in my life, all of a sudden I had no creative output. So I felt like I wanted to do something. I recorded this song and decided to post it on YouTube. And that was how it all started.
That's great. I know what you mean, by the way, of there's something about teaching in the academic world, and I'm a professor, as some
Mm.
people. And I actually love the process of teaching, but I made the mistake of allowing my department to elect me chair for a total of 6 years. It was the least creative time in my life. It was just a boring mess. I was really glad to get out of it. So, everyone has their own division of what they really love, what speaks to their soul, and what they're somehow sometimes forced to do, or if not forced to do, they just find themselves in that situation. And for you, then it was teaching in Barcelona, and you found music. What was the name of the first song that you covered?
The first song I covered was a song from a musical called Avenue Q. It's a fine, fine line. So that also kind of harkens back to my origins doing community musical theater as a kid. But I think you're absolutely right. Like when you're a creative person, you do need some sort of outlet, especially if your job isn't creative. You have to get it from somewhere. It's like you're a creative person and that's in you. That need is in you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. What was the first cover that you did and you put on YouTube where you began to see some of the magic that you now have, where, the first day that the video was up, you get 10,000 views, and before too long, you have over 1 million views. And one of your covers has what, like 10 million views? I mean, that is really
Almost. Yeah.
yeah, that's a lot of eyes. The only time I ever had anything at all like that, I'm almost ashamed to say, is I was on the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News. They were pretty bad back then too, not as bad as they are now. And the only reason I went on the show is he was getting about 6 or 7 million, viewers a night. And I figured, hey, those are a lot of eyes, and here's to hear what I'm saying.
Mhm.
What was the breakout cover for you?
It wasn't immediate like you described. It was kind of slow over time. That video, which is the same one that has almost 10 million views now, is my cover of Mr. Sandman by the Chordettes. I think that's a lot of people's first video of mine that they saw. When I released that video, I think it was only my third or fourth video on my channel. And at that time, I remember watching the views and being excited if the video got to 2,000 views after a few weeks. And I remember waiting for Mr. Sandman to get to 2,000 views after those few weeks. But for some reason, the YouTube algorithm just picked that video up a little bit later, and it kept getting recommended to people, and people were commenting and liking it. So the algorithm kept showing it to more people. So it wasn't right away overnight, but it just became this enormous snowball that has eventually snowballed into 9 million something views. So it's really, really wild.
That's amazing. I'll make a prediction that's not very hazardous because it's obvious to the direction that you're going. Within 5 years or sooner, it'll have 100 million views. Because once you get to that point, it does sort of snowball. And it was a great choice of a song. It does come from the 1950s. And give him wavy hair like Liberace. I wish I still had hair at all, let alone wavy hair like Liberace. But it was a great choice. And I know that a lot of the covers, because, one person, unless you're part of a group that's doing a cover, you need to have, different performances done by you, playing the instruments, singing the harmony, if there's harmony. When did you get the idea to give what you aptly call your clones the different personalities?
Oh, that's a great question. I might have to go back and actually look at the videos to be sure. The split screens were something that I started with Mr. Sandman, but I don't think that Mr. Sandman, because like I said, it was only my third or fourth video. They didn't have personalities at that point, I don't think. But at that point, I did kind of have the idea of choreography between the different ands that are on screen, because there's a moment in that video where I do like this kind of praying motion, and it's coordinated like 1, 2, 3, and people loved that. So I think the coordination between the different screens was how it started. And then after that, at some point, I'm not exactly sure when, the idea just to add another dimension with their facial expressions and the attitude of each one.
Yeah, that's really spectacular. And I reviewed some of your covers a couple of years ago, and I pointed out in that review, and it was one of the things that struck me, how whoever put together the video, and probably a combination of you and some technical person, managed to have at least one version of you, one of your clones, looking at the camera at all times. So while each of you were making faces, there was always one that was sort of like looking at you, and it was really an amazing thing that I haven't seen in any other kind of video. So in addition to your talent as a singer and your brilliant harmony and your choice of songs, I think you really have talent as an actress, and that actually comes out in the videos. Have you thought about going into acting at all? I mean, you probably wouldn't turn down an offer if some famous director came to you and said, hey, we're doing a sequel to Daisy Jones and the Six, and we like you to be in that. But has any director at all approached you, or is that something you're thinking of doing?
Yeah, I did grow up doing musical theater and just fell in love with the theater. I love musicals so much. I love being on stage. It's not really something that I'm actively pursuing right now, but of course I wouldn't turn something down. If someone wants to put me in a musical, I would say yes in a heartbeat. I mean, I do perform in my own way, and I have my own sort of stage. So maybe I'm not exactly an actor, but I definitely consider myself a performer.
Yeah, and if you think about it, acting and singing are closely related, because when you're singing in a way, you're inhabiting a slightly different persona. The person who's singing the song is not
Exactly,
precisely
yeah.
you, and acting is the same way. One of the problems, of course, as you know very well, is that it's hard to make money from covers, even with all the YouTube views, because YouTube happily tells you that, hey, you have what's it called, a copyright strike. I mean, I've noticed this even if I'm doing a an interview and I sing more than a line or two of a song there, and the in a podcast or whatever, I get that happy message from YouTube.
Yeah.
So and I don't know what else YouTube could do. I mean, I think they're bending over backwards in a way to respect the copyright of the people, but on the other hand, maybe the people who do the covers should get some kind of royalty. But what then do you do for money? I assume writing original songs is one way, and how is that going?
Yeah, YouTube gives you a percentage of that ad revenue from a cover, but it's an undisclosed percentage. So you're never sure exactly how much the original publishers are getting and how much you're getting. But it's definitely noticeably a lot less than if you were to do an original song and put ads on that video, or much, much less than if you were to do long form content. Usually the kind of thing where you're speaking to the camera, like video essays, documentary style videos where you can put ads in the middle. That's the most lucrative on YouTube. Obviously, I'm never going to put an ad in the middle of a song. That would be horrible. so I can't do that. But no, definitely the original artists absolutely deserve to get their share, and YouTube has it set up pretty nicely. It's fairly convenient. All I have to do is tick a box. Other than the YouTube stuff, my main source would be Patreon, which is a monthly membership platform where I give the people who support me there access to behind the scenes posts and content. I let them see all the videos a day early. Sometimes I run polls for patrons. And lately with the original music, I've also been doing sort of director's commentary on those videos and those songs. So it's exclusive content that you can pay to access.
All right, so I have a suggestion for you
Mhm.
about that and making money, and this relates to what you were just saying, that you sort of grew up doing musicals. Here's my suggestion: you should write a musical, and then you could do the whole musical, and it would be great in any case, and then there'd be a place for commercials in there.
Yeah,
As
yeah. At least at intermission, I could put an ad or two. That wouldn't be too bad.
yeah, those musicals are a great, I think, underappreciated form. I mean, if you think about, I mean, you probably know these better than I do, but my wife and I actually went through a phase, about 20 or 30 years ago. I don't know what started it. Oh, yeah, I do know what started it. I was teaching at a school out in New Jersey, a place called Fairleigh Dickinson University, and the student drama group were doing Kiss Me, Kate. So we went out to see it, and it was pretty good, John. So some Cole Porter's probably best music, great songs, really clever lyrics, catchy tunes. So we got on this, Kiss Me, Kate jag, and then from there, went over to, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and all those people. Um, and I guess rock music, the Who had, in effect, a musical, and a few other groups did, but one of the reasons why I put the I guess this isn't giving too much away in this real life story and its real life radio play. The idea that there was a collaboration between Isaac Asimov, the science fiction writer, and Paul
Yeah.
McCartney to do a musical, and it's real in the alternate reality
Yeah.
story. But actually, I got the idea because Paul McCartney did actually ask Isaac Asimov. McCartney had an idea for him, and he asked Asimov, "Hey, could you write a treatment?" And Asimov, never turned down an offer if there was any possibility of money. I once had a book of essays on a philosopher, and I thought it'd be a good idea to have him to write the preface. And I was speaking to the publisher, saying, "I guess we should offer him like $10,000." And the publisher said, "No, Isaac Asimov, offer him $100. He'll take it in a minute." So Asimov never said no to any offer. So he did. He wrote the treatment, and McCartney didn't like it. And that's why it was never done, believe it or
Oh, wow,
not.
that's so interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that that came from something real. I love that.
Yeah. Well, the key to writing, I think, effective and maybe good science fiction is to, and especially alternate reality stuff, is to keep it as close to reality as possible. And,
Mhm.
it's almost like, they call it the uncanny valley in psychology. The things that scare us are they're frightening because in some way they're very close to what reality is. Um, let's go to Real Love, which I, have said, and I really mean it. I think it's the centerpiece of the story, and
Thank you so
you
much.
bring it off beautifully. Uh, so first of all, were you a fan of that song before I asked you to do, the cover of it? I mean, maybe you had heard of it and then you got to know it better. Was it something you always loved?
It was actually completely new to me, that song. Embarrassingly, I do like the Beatles, of course, but I guess I'm not as big of a fan. I'm not sure if I can say I'm a fan if I didn't know that song. But yeah, I of course listened to it as soon as I heard about the project, and I loved it. Yeah, it's haunting and it's beautiful.
Yeah, well, you're not the only one who hasn't heard of the song. I mean, it's had a strange evolution. Uh, John Lennon actually wrote a couple of versions of it after he had left the Beatles. And after he was murdered, Yoko Ono gave it to Paul McCartney.
Mhm.
And then McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr went in and produced it. And by the way, Jeff Lynne produced it. So here again, Jeff Lynne figures into
All
this.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And there's something, and you would be aware of this, it's just another way that music touches your heart. There was always something about that song that was really heartbreaking to me, and that it sort of showed that there was something wrong with our universe, our reality, that when that song came out, like in 1996, Lennon should have been singing it with the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so, and one of the things I often point out, everyone has like turning points in their lives. And for me, it was John Lennon being murdered that to this very day is still like the most heartbreaking public assassination. And I'm, someone who's lived through the assassination of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy. But one of the reasons why I wrote Real Life is I needed to sort of focus on that. And again, you just really brought it to life beautifully. I get from listening and watching your videos and reading some of what you say that you often do video covers based on what your Patreon supporters suggest. You sort of reward them by doing it. But do you have any other plans to do videos that like they're rolling around in your head? You don't have to tell us which ones they are, but I think most creative people have like a lot of things rolling around their heads and they eventually get to one or another of them.
Yeah, that's very true. I do kind of a mix of the Patreon suggestions and ones that I want to do, of course. I have a list of ideas, so if I'm ever not sure what to do next, I'll go back to that list. But usually I'm just listening to music, on shuffle or looking through an old playlist or something, and something will come on and immediately I'll be like, oh, I have to cover this. Sometimes I'll get even an idea of like, oh, this trumpet part, I'm gonna do it with background vocals and do it like do's, stuff like that. So I get inspired in the moment usually.
Well, you do those do's, have those background parts very well. And one of the things I really love about your version of Real Love, that especially that very last part where you do, it's real love, love. I can't even hit the note, and then you have, full voice there. They come through very well. Um, to what extent have you collaborated with people? I mean, I've seen some good things you do with maybe one or two other people. How much of that can we expect from you in the future?
Yeah, I love collaborating with other people, especially to make videos, because I started doing everything myself out of necessity, but that doesn't mean that I love doing every part on the same level. There are certain things that I like doing a lot more than others. And working with other people who are amazing at what they do just makes the finished product so much better. When you have multiple people and they're all great, the sum is greater than each of the parts. So yeah, absolutely. Now, thanks to Patreon and having been doing this for several years, I'm more stable than I was before. I'm able to afford to hire some of those people to help me, because of course I want to pay the people that work for me. And absolutely, yeah, I don't want to always be doing everything myself. I want to do a lot. I like to do a lot, and I like to be in charge and in control, but I know that the finished products can be so much better when I have other people helping me too.
Well, it's good that you can do that. When it comes to writing, I've collaborated a few times, but by and large, I don't like collaborating as a writer because I like being God in terms of what I'm creating. I like to have absolute control.
Mhm.
But music is a little different, so some of the songs that I've written, I usually write, I always write the lyrics. I don't think I've ever written music and someone's put lyrics to it. And sometimes I write lyrics and music, but I find it, a lot of fun to write the lyrics and somebody else writes the music.
Mhm.
But in terms of what you do with your music, you then don't mind though, because when you're working with others, as you were saying, inevitably you do have to be open to their ideas, and that's okay with you.
For writing the original music, it is a little bit different. I was thinking more about like making videos and working on the covers, that I prefer to work with other people. When it comes to the writing, I have done a little bit of co-writing, and if it's a good fit, it's a fun time. But the original music is definitely the thing that I hold the closest to my heart. I would say that's what I'm the most passionate about. So I do really enjoy writing alone and then taking it to a producer, a mixer, a mastering engineer, maybe session musicians that can bring it to the next level. So I'm still not doing everything myself, but the words and the music are still mine.
That's good. That's good. And I'll just tell our viewers and listeners that I'm going to have a link to Anne's original music videos on YouTube. How
Thanks.
many, how
Wow.
many, sure, how many original songs have you written so far?
Well, I've released two 5-track EPs and a handful of singles, and written, of course, I've written much more than that. And I have a handful that I'm working on demos for right now to hopefully take those to a producer and start those first steps in eventually releasing more music.
One of the things when you write songs, of course, is it's great if someone more famous than you decides to record it, because although it's not you being the recording artist, that is great for you as the writer. Of course, even that is not a sure ticket. A long, long time ago, back in the 1960s, I wrote a song called Unbelievable. I wrote both the words and music, brought it to a publisher. They loved it. They gave me a contract. They gave me $100 advance. And there was a group that had a couple of #1 records called the Vogues. They had a song called You're the One, another song, 5 O'Clock World. They went in and recorded it. And before they had a chance to release it, another group called the Letterman, who sang, like, in my view, like, even for me, like really old-fashioned, music, like, the way you look tonight. I mean, you'd probably be able to do a great job with it. But the record company, Reprise Records, decided to take the Vogues in that direction. And that left my song Unbelievable, not literally on the floor, but figuratively on the floor. So,
Wow.
it's not an easy ticket, but that's something that's its own realm, and that's something we probably should pursue. Another area that you probably know about is getting your music into movies and television shows. I think you need more or less an agent of some sort to do that. It used to be the case 10, 15 years ago. You could almost meet people online. But nowadays, most television and movie producers and companies want to have an agent brokering it. So have you pursued that at all? Are you going to pursue that for your original music?
Yeah, I know a couple boutique sync agencies that I have some of my original songs with them. So that would be a dream come true to have an original song in a movie, TV show, trailer, ad, really, anything like that. That's a huge career goal of mine, actually. The one placement that I did have of my cover of Dream a Little Dream of Me on The Boys on Amazon Prime was not through one of those agencies. It was actually the music supervisor for the show that found me directly, which is highly unusual and really flattering and amazing. What I didn't know at the time was that that song was written into the season as kind of a plot point. So they probably were specifically looking for covers of that song, and I had already released that video, and it had over 500,000 views on YouTube. So I'm not sure, but I think that they did find me through the YouTube video for that one.
I love that. That's a great story. I mean, that's the magic. There are a lot of things that are wrong with social media and the internet and the web, and even before social media, there were always, stalkers. The problems that we're all aware of, and social media has made it worse. And one of the things I always try to stress to my students is there is nonetheless another side to that, and the internet is a magical place for getting discovered. One of the things that I've been writing about for 20 or 30 years is how before the internet, the only way that anyone could make it in any creative field is some gatekeeper had to allow them to come in. And the Beatles were turned down by 25 different record companies. And imagine that 25 different record companies heard, I want to hold you. Yeah, you know what? It's okay, but I don't think it's quite right.
Yeah.
And and obviously they were persistent, and their manager, Brian Epstein, was instrumental in getting them heard by the right people. But nowadays there is that other way of doing it, getting your, material out there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I wouldn't be here right now I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for this current landscape being the way that it is. So I'm so thankful, that it's no longer necessary to get a big record deal.
Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. I'm not sure whether it was W.C. Field or Mae West, but one of those two reportedly said, "I don't care what you say about me as long as you spell my name right." So, that's like another version of there's no such thing as bad publicity.
Mhm.
But I noticed that you do have your comments enabled on all of your videos, and I think that's great because people love to talk to you. And do you get upset when somebody says something about your work that's less than just this wonderful praise that you deserve?
Yeah, it's something that I've heard a lot of content creators, quote unquote, talk about this phenomenon that the one negative comment affects you so much more. It has much more weight than 10 positive ones. For some reason, we just really take those to heart hard. But, most of the time, it doesn't hurt too bad. I'm, I guess, pretty used to seeing them at this point, and I think I have a pretty healthy relationship with my comment section. I do read them, but I don't take them too seriously if they're super negative.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, the positive so far outweighs the negative. That's what I should be focusing on anyway.
I think you're completely right. I mean, I think they outweigh it like 999 to 1. So maybe
Yeah, I would say so, probably.
well, my grandmother actually had an understanding of that. She once told me, look, the reason why, if you get like one negative review or whatever, why it hurts, you have 10 fingers, right? And if you stub one of your fingers, that still hurts. It doesn't matter that your other 9 fingers are fine. That one finger
Mhm.
stub still hurts. You know what? And the other thing I learned a long time ago, my second science fiction novel, Borrowed Tides, um, over the years, people have said, that's my worst novel. And every time, who wants to hear that? But then someone said to me, well, you have to have not every novel can be your best novel, right? So,
Sure.
you have to hear that. But on the other hand, right, we want, nothing but praise and love,
Yeah.
for all the hard work and all the heart and soul that we put into all of this. Without giving away like any state secrets or anything you want to keep secret at this point, can you tell us what we can expect from you in the future? For example, if somebody were talking to you a month ago, you could have said, well, I can't tell you the exact name of it, but I'm doing this fabulous cover for a radio play. So what can
Yes.
you tell us about that?
I'm pretty much always at all times working on a cover of something. So no matter when you're watching or listening to this, that will still be true. I'm working on one right now. I'm working on more original music, which I hope to release with music videos. I feel that's super, super important to me. And above all, just being grateful and going with the flow. I have so much fun doing the covers. That's why I'm still doing them. And I'm so grateful that they found an audience that is super supportive and really enjoys them. So as long as it keeps working, this is what I always say, as long as it keeps working, I will keep doing it.
Well, good. I hope you do it forever
Thank
because
you.
it is
Thanks.
always a unique pleasure. I'm subscribed to your YouTube channel, like
Thank
the
you. Yeah.
thousands of other people, and I always smile, and I'm never disappointed when I see that you have something new up on your channel.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I should say, in case someone is just listening to this or would like to know what the date is, this is March 29th, 2023. Uh, Optimist that I am, I expect people to be watching and listening to this video for at least 100 or more years into the future, especially when Anne becomes even more famous than she is now, because she certainly deserves it. So, and
Thank you.
it was
This
great.
video will be out there for anyone to find.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm so inspired. I'm probably gonna, it went pretty, it went, I think, very well. I'm gonna put this video up in an hour or two on YouTube.
For
Then,
sure.
yeah, and then, and by the way, I will also in the, at the end of the video, in the, I guess what's called like end caps or whatever they're called, those little things.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, I'll put in, a link to, your Real Love cover, and in the actual show notes, URLs to all sorts of other things. And then a few days from now, I do have an audio podcast. So I'm going to put up an audio version of this. And what I'll probably do in the audio version is actually end with a whole bunch of your, best, songs and covers.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
yeah.
Do you want me to send you any files?
Yeah, well, if you want to say, yeah, I was going to say, why don't you send me, why don't you pick two of your original songs, and I'll put them in the, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that in the audio version of the podcast.
Okay.
So listen, I just want to thank you again, once again, and I
Thank
know,
you. Yeah.
Vin feels the same way. You really lit up the video at a the radio play at a perfect time. So anybody who's getting like a little bored with the story, as soon as they heard you singing Real Love, they no doubt began paying more attention to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you so much for asking me. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you for this interview. It's been great. I'm so glad to be here.
My pleasure. Take care.